The chrome and glass spire of Ethel Technologies pierced the Manhattan sky, a monument to ambition. My ambition, our ambition, once. For 3 years, I'd watched it from a distance, from hospital rooms, from the sterile quiet of our Tribeca penthouse, from the exhausting, beautiful haze of early motherhood and the grueling climb back to health. Today, I was walking back in. My hand didn't tremble on the elevator button for the executive floors. I'd chosen the outfit with deliberate care. A sharply tailored Alexander McQueen blazer, slim-fit trousers, heels that meant business, armor. The body inside felt both foreign and familiar, stronger than it had been in years, but marked by the war it had survived to bring Liam into the world. My son, the only pure thing to come out of the last decade. The elevator chimed, a soft, expensive sound. The doors opened directly into the plush reception of Ethel's C-suite. The air smelled of money and lemon polish. Jessica, the receptionist who'd been here since the seed funding days, looked up. Her eyes widened, then filled with genuine warmth. Natalie, oh my God, you look amazing. She came around the desk, hands outstretched. Jessica, it's good to see you. I took her hands, the gesture feeling almost alien. 3 years of near isolation will do that. Is he in? Mr. Bishop? He's in a wrap-up with the Asia team, but he should be free for lunch soon. He didn't mention. I thought I'd surprise him. I said, my voice smooth, a lie, so easily told, the first of many today. Perhaps. I'll just wait in his office. I moved past her before she could question it. Christopher's office was a corner beast, all glass and curated masculinity. The view was staggering. I didn't sit. I stood at the window, my reflection a ghost over the skyline. This view was built on lines of my code, on pitches I gave with a dry throat and a pounding heart, on deals I closed while fighting morning sickness. Christopher was the face, the charm, the frontman. I was the architecture. He'd forgotten that. I was here to remind him. My phone buzzed. Ethan, you in the lion's den? In his office. The view's still impressive. Remember, the corporate filings show some interesting shifts in the holding company structure. Subtle. The kind of subtle a guy employs when he's trying to quietly rewire the power grid. Be a shark. Nat, not a ghost. I didn't reply. A shark. I felt more like a seismograph, waiting for the first tremor. The door opened. I didn't turn. Jessica, I need the Q2 projections before. Christopher's voice, rich and confident, cut off. I turned slowly. For a second, it was just shock on his handsome face. Then, the practiced, camera-ready smile snapped into place, but it didn't reach his eyes. Those were calculating, darting from me to the closed door behind him. Natalie, sweetheart, this is a surprise. He crossed the room, taking my shoulders, pressing a cool kiss to my cheek. The smell of his cologne, something new and aggressively woody, cloyed in my nostrils. You should have called. I would have cleared my schedule. I wanted to see the kingdom. I said, stepping back, breaking his hold. It's grown. It has. We're firing on all cylinders. He jammed his hands in his pockets, a boyish gesture that used to charm me. Now it looked like a tell. Is everything okay? Is Liam? Liam is perfect. He started preschool last week. Loves it. I let a beat of silence fall. I'm ready to come back. Chris. His smile stiffened. Back. Honey, that's of course. We'd love to have you involved. Charity galas. The foundation work that you'd be perfect. Not the foundation. Here, Ethel. He laughed. A short, uncomfortable burst of air. Nat, come on. The pace here is insane. Your health. We've been over this. I don't want you stressing yourself. You've been through enough. I've been through recovery. Now I'm recovered. My doctor has signed off on a full return to work. My real work. I walked to his desk, trailing a finger along the polished edge. I was thinking Chief Strategy Officer, my old title, with expanded purview. It's time. His affable mask slipped. Just for a second, I saw the irritation, the panic, before he smoothed it over. The CSO role we've restructured. It's not a standalone anymore. The duties are spread across the leadership team. Jasmine, my new head of product innovation, that she's taken on a lot of that strategic vision. Jasmine, the name hung in the air. I'd seen it on press releases, heard it in Ethan's carefully neutral briefings. The Wunderkind, the rising star. I'm sure she's very capable. I said, my tone neutral, but I built the original strategic roadmap for Ethel. I think I can still contribute. I looked directly at him. Unless you have a reason not to want me in the building. Christopher, the use of his full name, snapped his head up. He studied me, reassessing. The fragile, ailing wife he'd left at home was gone. In her place was someone he vaguely remembered. The woman who'd sat across from venture capitalists and didn't blink. Don't be ridiculous, he said, his voice tighter. Of course I want you. I'm just protective. But if you're sure... He was backed into a corner, and he knew it. A public scene. A denied wife that IT was bad optics. We'll make it work. We'll figure out a role. Chief Strategy Officer. I repeated. We'll announce it next week. For now, I'd like to refamiliarize myself. Sit in on meetings. Have lunch. Lunch. Right. I usually eat in the exec dining. It's a working. Perfect. I'll join you. The Ethel executive dining room was on the top floor, a study in minimalist luxury. The murmur of conversations and the clink of fine china paused for a half second as we entered. Eyes flicked to me, then away. Quick and curious, I recognized some faces, that old war horses from the early days. Their nods were respectful, wary. The newer, younger executives just looked puzzled. Christopher led us to a large table by the window where a group was already seated. The center of attention was a woman in her late 20s, breathtakingly beautiful, leaning forward as she animatedly made a point. Jasmine Reyes. Her laughter was a bright, sharp sound. She saw Christopher and her face lit up with a proprietary warmth that chilled my blood. Then her eyes slid to me, and the warmth iced over into polite inquiry. Everyone, a surprise, Christopher said, his arm snaking around my waist in a show of possession that felt like a brand. My wife, Natalie, is paying us a visit. A chorus of welcome back and nice to meet you went around. Jasmine's smile was brilliant and utterly empty. Natalie, what a pleasure. Chris talks about you all the time. The lie was so smooth it was almost impressive. I took the empty seat beside Christopher. A server appeared. Just a green salad. Please. Dressing on the side. Lunch conversation resumed. Awkwardly at first. Then gaining steam. It was all shop talk. Burn rates. Launch timelines. Competitor moves. I listened. Sipping sparkling water. My salad arrived. I picked at it. My appetite gone. Christopher was holding court. But his energy was off. His glances at me furtive. Jasmine was holding forth on a new product integration. The legacy code is the real bottleneck, she said, with a dismissive wave of her hand. It's a dinosaur. We need to sunset the whole module and rebuild from the ground up. That legacy code was the Ethel Core algorithm. My life's work for 5 solid years. The foundation everything else was built on. Sometimes dinosaurs have a robust skeletal structure that's hard to improve upon. I said, my voice quiet but cutting through the chatter. The efficiency loss in a full rebuild might outweigh the perceived benefits of a shiny new interface. Jasmine's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. With all due respect, maintaining outdated systems out of sentiment is how companies become irrelevant. We need to be bold. That's the vision Chris and I have been driving. Chris, and I let the phrase hung there. No one corrected her. Christopher cleared his throat. It's a complex technical discussion. Sweetheart, Jasmine's team has done deep analysis. I'm sure they have. I said. I placed my fork down and gently slid my mostly untouched salad. plate across the table, setting it in front of Christopher. You didn't eat much at breakfast. You should have something. It was an old, intimate gesture from a time when we cared for each other, a time before the slow poison of neglect and betrayal. He stared at the plate as if it were a live snake. Jasmine's eyes snapped from the plate to my face, her charming facade cracking. A flush crept up her neck. She looked at Christopher, who was frozen, then back at me with naked hostility. What do you think you're doing? Her voice was no longer bright, but low and sharp. The table went silent. I looked at her, calm, making sure my husband eats. He gets cranky when he's hypoglycemic. She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Are you for real? You just waltz in here after God knows how long and think you can, what, mother him? She leaned forward, her gaze vicious. Who do you think you are? Walking in and sitting at this table? This is for key personnel, for people who actually build things here. The air was sucked out of the room. Every eye was fixed on us. I could feel Christopher's rigid panic beside me. I didn't look at Jasmine. Slowly, deliberately, I turned my head and looked at my husband. My gaze was flat, expectant. Well, it asked, who am I? Christopher Bishop, CEO, the man who commanded boardrooms and billion-dollar valuations. Crumpled. His face went bone-white. His hand, reaching for his water glass, jerked, knocking the fork off the table with a loud clatter that made everyone flinch. Jasmine. He choked out, the word strangled, but she was on a roll, fueled by jealousy and a sense of throne room entitlement. Seriously, Chris, what is this? I don't have time for this dowager vibe during a working lunch. She glared at me. You have no right to sit next to my boyfriend and pretend you belong here. There it was, the tremor, the fault line cracking wide open. A profound, absolute silence engulfed the table. You could hear the hum of the HVAC system. I kept my eyes locked on Christopher. His mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. He looked like a man watching his life flash before his eyes and seeing only the exit signs. Then, I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the baring of teeth. I finally turned my head to Jasmine, taking her in at the furious beauty, the entitlement, the staggering, stupid bravery of the mistress who didn't know she was the mistress. It seems your boyfriend, I said, my voice clear and carrying in the dead quiet, forgot to introduce his wife, and I paused, letting the word land. The other co-founder of Ethel Technologies. I pushed my chair back. The sound was deafening. I didn't look at Christopher's ashen face again. I didn't look at Jasmine's, which was cycling from fury to dawning. Horrified comprehension. I looked at the old guard at the table, at the ones who remembered. I saw a flicker in their eyes. Not pity. Acknowledgement. Welcome back. Natalie. One of them. Old Carl from finance. Murmured, just for me. I gave him the slightest nod. Then I walked out. My heels clicked a steady, unhurried rhythm on the polished floor. A countdown to the end of Christopher Bishop's carefully constructed world. The elevator doors closed on the frozen tableau behind me. In the descending silence, I leaned against the wall. My heart was pounding, a wild, triumphant drum against my ribs. Not with anxiety, with power. The first move was made. The gauntlet thrown. The penthouse was silent, a museum of cold perfection. I walked to the vast living room window, looking at the same skyline from a different angle. I pulled out my phone, called up a picture of Liam, his face smeared with chocolate, laughing without a care in the world. It starts now, baby, I whispered to the photo. Then I opened my laptop. Not to check emails, to open a set of encrypted files Ethan had helped me prepare. Financial records, old incorporation documents, email archives I'd meticulously backed up before my maternity leave began. The ghost was gone. The shark was in the water. And the water, for Christopher and his wunderkind, was about to turn very, very red. The silence in the penthouse that night was a living thing. It pulsed with the echoes of the day's rupture. I sat at the kitchen island, a single lamp pooling light on the marble, my fingers tracing the edge of my tablet. I wasn't waiting. I was planning. The confrontation in the dining room wasn't an emotional outburst. It was a calculated detonation. Now, I had to map the fallout and secure the territory. The keypad at the front door beeped. 3 rapid tones ducked Christopher's code. The door opened and closed with a soft, definitive click. His footsteps were heavier than usual, a telltale sign of stress. Or perhaps the 3 fingers of scotch I knew he'd have poured in his office after I'd left. He appeared in the doorway of the great room, his tie loose, the handsome lines of his face drawn tight. He didn't come in, just leaned against the frame, adopting a pose of weary exasperation. Well, that was a hell of a performance today. Natalie. His voice was carefully modulated, a blend of disappointment and condescension. Care to explain what that was all about? I took a slow sip of water, placing the glass down with deliberate quiet. Which part? Christopher? The part where I brought you lunch? Or the part where your vice president of product innovation announced her romantic affiliation with the CEO in front of the entire executive team? He pushed off the doorframe, throwing his hands up. God, is that what this is about? You're jealous? Jasmine is a kid. She's passionate. She gets overexcited. She's not my girlfriend. For Christ's sake. She looks up to me. It's a mentorship. You, of all people, know how intense those startup relationships can be. A mentorship. I repeated, letting the word hang. She used the word boyfriend. In a room full of our colleagues. That's a very specific term for a protégé to use. Don't you think? He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. She's young. She misspoke. She was feeling defensive because you just appeared out of nowhere and started acting like you own the place. I do own the place. Christopher, I said, my voice flat. 42% of it, or have the share certificates dissolved in my absence. He flinched. That was the real nerve. Not the mistress. The money. The control. Don't be dramatic. Of course you're an owner, but running the day-to-day. Now you've been gone. The world has moved at light speed. You can't just waltz back in and expect everything to be the way it was. Your health. My health is fine. I cut in. My doctor's reports, which I've emailed to you twice, confirm that. I am cleared for full, unrestricted work. What I saw today, however, was a company that seems to have forgotten its foundational strategy. Talking about sunsetting the core algorithm? That's not moving forward. Christopher, that's sawing off the branch you're sitting on. He saw an opening, a shift from the personal to the professional. He grabbed it. See, this is what I'm talking about. Sentiment. The core is 10 years old. It's a legacy patchwork. Jasmine's team has a plan for a completely new AI native architecture that will blow the doors off the market. You're clinging to the past. I'm clinging to what works. What's scalable? What's paid for this? I gestured around the $20 million apartment and her alleged AI native architecture. But fine, let's not argue vision in the kitchen at midnight. I met his eyes. I'm coming back. My title will be Chief Strategy Officer. We'll announce it Monday. My old office, next to yours, will be cleared by end of day tomorrow. His jaw tightened. That office is Jasmine's now. She needs the proximity to my team. Then move her, or move yourself. I don't care, but I will be in that office, with full system access and a seat at every table that matters. By 9 a.m. Monday, or the next conversation I have about Jasmine won't be about her strategic insights. It will be with the board's ethics committee, and it will include the security footage from the Hamptons property the company purchased last quarter, the one with the biometric locks that, curiously, only recognize 2 people's fingerprints, yours and hers. The color drained from his face. The Hamptons house, he thought, that was buried in a labyrinth of LLCs. I saw the frantic calculations behind his eyes. Denial? Too risky that I clearly knew specifics. Outrage? It wouldn't stick. He was cornered. And he knew it. You've been spying on me. He whispered, the accusation hollow. I've been protecting my assets. I corrected. It's a subtle difference. Do we have an understanding? He stared at me, a stranger in his own kitchen. The dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The weakened wife was gone. In her place was a shareholder, a co-founder, and a threat. He gave a single, stiff nod. Fine. CSO. Your old office. But Natalie, the company is different. Don't expect a welcome party. I didn't come for a party. Christopher. I came to work. Monday morning. I walked into my old office. It smelled of new paint and Jasmine's cloying perfume. Two bros and ambition. Her personal effects were gone, but the ghost of her occupancy lingered. I didn't sit. I powered up the new terminal, logged in with the credentials the flustered IT guy had provided an hour earlier, and began to map my digital kingdom. My first call was internal. Marcus? It's Natalie Bishop. A beat of surprised silence. Then a warm, familiar voice. Natalie. Hell of an entrance on Friday. The whole server room is still buzzing. What can I do for you? Marcus had been our first system architect. A brilliant, quiet man who cared more about code integrity than corporate politics. He'd never liked Christopher. I need a mirror of the core algorithm repository. The entire commit history. From day one. And Marcus, I need it on a drive you give to me personally, not on the network. He didn't ask why. He just said, the new architecture team's branch commits are a mess. They're trying to reverse engineer by brute force. It's ugly. I'll bet. The drive. Please. Today. If possible. Lunchtime. The usual spot. The usual spot was a dusty sandwich joint 2 blocks over. Marcus slid a nondescript black external drive across the sticky table. It's all there, including some interesting recent activity on the patent server. What kind of activity? Filed amendments to the original core patents, adding co-inventors, pushing them through legal with a priority flag. He took a bite of his pastrami. Jasmine Reyes is now listed as a co-inventor on 4 of the 6 foundational patents, backdated to around the time she joined. The audacity was breathtaking. It wasn't just theft, it was historical revisionism. Thank you, Marcus. There's more, he said, lowering his voice. The financial system, there are some weird external vendor payments. Huge consulting fees to a firm called Palace Consulting. Mignon. It doesn't map to any project I've ever heard of. The approval chain is shallow. I stored the name. Palace Consulting. Can you get me the payment details? The bank account info? He shook his head. That's beyond my access. You'd need finance or someone with CFO level keys. Understood. This is enough for now. I owe you. You built the heart of the machine. Nat, I'd just like to see it run clean. He gave me a grim smile. Be careful. The new guard plays dirty. My next stop was a sleek, modern law office in Midtown. Ethan Cole rose from behind a desk that was surprisingly clear. He was in his 40s, sharp, with the calm demeanor of a man who'd seen every kind of human avarice. He'd been my friend since law school, long before I'd met Christopher. The plot thickens by the hour. I hear, he said, dispensing with greetings. CSO, that's a start, but it's a title. What's the play? I handed him the drive. Patent fraud, adding an unqualified co-inventor to core IP to dilute my stake and justify her position. He plugged it in. Scrolling. Provable, but messy. It's a civil fight. What else you got? Suspicious financial flows. Millions to a shell consulting firm called Palace. I need you to trace it. Find the beneficiary. Ethan's eyes gleamed. That was the language he understood. Now we're talking money. If we can tie the shell to Christopher, or to the girlfriend, that's breach of fiduciary duty, embezzlement, potentially That gets the board's attention, and possibly the DA's. He made a note. I'll get my forensic accountant on it. Quietly. And the other thing? I asked. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thin folder. The corporate structure. As I suspected, Ethel Tech is now wholly owned by a new parent entity, Ethel Holdings. The shares were swapped in a tax-advantageous restructuring 2 years ago. You still own 42% of the operating company, but Christopher, through a series of voting trusts and his own shares, holds 52% of the holding company board. He can outvote you on any major disposition of assets at the parent level. He's building a wall. I said, cold fury settling in my gut, moving the real value up, where I have less control. He's insulating himself. Ethan corrected. But walls have gates. We need the keys. We need leverage. The financials and the personal indiscretions are potential sledgehammers. Keep digging. Get me something concrete on the money. Back at Ethel, the atmosphere was a minefield of averted gazes and forced smiles. My re-entry was the only topic of conversation. I attended the weekly leadership sync, taking a seat at the long table. Christopher, at the head, avoided looking at me. Jasmine, seated to his immediate right, looked at me with pure, undiluted hatred. The meeting droned on. Jasmine presented her roadmap for the new platform, Ethel Nexus. It was all buzzwords and flashy graphics, devoid of any substantive technical depth. When she finished, Christopher led the applause. Bold, visionary. This is the future, he declared. It's a rebranding of a 3-year-old open-source framework with our logo slapped on it. I said, my voice cutting through the clapping. It died abruptly. All heads swiveled to me. Jasmine's smile was venomous. I'm sorry, Natalie, but with all due respect, you've been out of the tech landscape. The open-source community has evolved. What we're doing is a synthesis. The framework you're referencing is Prometheus. I said, leaning back, it's good for rapid prototyping, not for enterprise scale, real-time data processing, which is Ethel's entire business. Its memory management is garbage for our use case. The lead maintainer has said as much on their GitHub issues page, which I tapped my tablet. I've just linked in the chat. Furthermore, your projected cost savings are based on deprecated licensing models. The new fee structure for commercial deployment kicks in next quarter, which would make your proposed architecture 40% more expensivito run than our current. Dinosaur Core. The room was utterly silent. A junior VP stifled a cough. Jasmine's face was a mask of fury and confusion. She hadn't done the reading. Christopher stepped in, his voice tight. This is a high-level strategy meeting. Natalie, we can drill into the technical details later. The technical details are the strategy. Christopher, I said, not looking away from Jasmine. Or did you forget? Building on a shaky foundation isn't bold. It's bankrupt. I stood up, gathering my tablet. I've sent my notes on the actual Prometheus cost structures and limitations to everyone. When the roadmap is based on accurate data, I'm happy to discuss it. I walked out, leaving a room thick with tension. An hour later, an email arrived from Christopher, carbon copied to HR and Jasmine, to ensure a smooth reintegration. Natalie will be focusing on long-term strategic analysis. Effective immediately, all department heads should route budget and staffing requests through Jasmine for the Nexus project. Natalie will be consulted as needed. It was a blatant power strip, a way to make me a figurehead without authority. I smiled. Let him think he'd won a battle. He'd just shown his hand, revealing his fear. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the meeting notes. You still got it. The Palace payments. The bank is First Manhattan. Account name is Hermes Ventures. Thought you should know. A friend. I stared at the message. Marcus. Or someone else. A friend. It was a start. Hermes Ventures. A shell to hide a shell. but every wall had a crack. That evening, I sat in my stark, silent living room, the city lights twinkling below. I opened the encrypted file where I was compiling everything: the patent amendments, the shell company name, the hostile board structure, the testimonial of 100 silent employees who'd watched Jasmine's humiliating defeat today. Christopher thought he was boxing me out. He thought he was playing corporate chess. He didn't realize I wasn't playing on the board anymore. I was dismantling the table. I typed a new entry. Leverage point number 1. Jasmine's incompetence. Exposed. Morale of old guard. Leverage point number 2. Patent fraud. Hard evidence. Leverage point number 3. Palace/Hermes money trail. In progress. Target. Not just my seat. The whole board. His reputation. Their future. I closed the file. The pretense was over. The paper trail was just beginning. And I was just getting started. The rumor mill at Ethel was a high-efficiency turbine, powered by Slack channels, clandestine coffee runs, and the sheer, unadulterated drama of it all, my return, and the dining room confrontation, had thrown a grenade into the carefully curated narrative of Christopher's solo genius and Jasmine's inevitable rise. The company fractured along invisible fault lines. The old guard, who remembered the grind of the early days and eyed me with a mix of pity and wary hope, and the new order. Jasmine's acolytes and Christopher's yes-men, who viewed me as a specter at the feast, a relic trying to halt progress. My new office, my old office, was a bunker. I'd had the lingering scent of tuberose scrubbed away and replaced with the clean, sharp smell of lemon and disinfectant. From here, I waged a quiet war. Christopher's edict to rout budgets through Jasmine was a paper shield. Influence is a currency traded in whispers and expertise. People started coming to me anyway, late, after hours, using back channels. Marcus was my first regular. Then came Anya from legal, tight-lipped and nervous, sliding a folder across my desk one evening. The Palace Consulting Master Services Agreement. She muttered. The signatures, the payment approvals. It's all above board. But the scopii vague to the point of being meaningless. Strategic advisory services. For 7 figures a quarter. I flipped through the legalese. The signatory for Palace was an LLC registered in Delaware. A black hole. Who brought them on? Christopher. Direct mandate. Bypassed procurement. The CFO objected, but was overruled. The board was told it was for market intelligence critical to the Nexus transition. Anya looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. I shouldn't be here, but you are, I said softly, closing the folder, because vague 7-figure contracts that bypass procedure have a way of blowing up, and lawyers who saw nothing get caught in the shrapnel. Thank you, Anya. She just nodded, a quick, bird-like motion, and fled. The digital breadcrumbs from my friend led to a dead end. Hermes Ventures was another shell, a Russian nesting doll of obfuscation. Ethan's forensic accountant was untangling the chain, but it took time. What I needed was a spark, a catalyst. It arrived, ironically, in the form of a gilt-edged invitation. Ethel Technologies, Summer Solstice Gala, celebrating innovation vision. It was to be held at the Lighthouse, a brutalist concrete pier turned event space jetting into the Hudson. Black tie, a who's who of tech and finance. Christopher's grand stage to unveil the Nexus vision to investors and the press. My attendance was not optional. It was a mandatory theater of marital and corporate unity. It's a trap, Ethan said over the phone. A beautiful, champagne-soaked trap. He'll parade you as the recovered wife, the supportive partner, while that girl hangs off his arm all night. He'll use you to normalize her presence. I know, I said, standing in a boutique fitting room, staring at my reflection in a column of ivory silk. The dress was architectural, severe, and powerful. It was not the dress of a supportive wife. It was the dress of a sovereign, but it's also a stage. And I'm done being a prop in his play. What's the move? I'm going to remind everyone who built the theater. The night of the gala, I arrived alone, in a town car. Let Christopher and Jasmine arrive together. I didn't need an escort. The lighthouse was a cathedral of money and ambition. Light sculptures arced against the exposed concrete, and the floor-to-ceiling windows framed the dark, glittering river. The air hummed with the sound of deals being made and alliances being forged. I saw him immediately. Christopher held court at the center of the room, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo, laughing too loudly. And there, fused to his side like a living accessory, was Jasmine. She wore a dress of crimson liquid silk that seemed painted on, and she glittered with borrowed diamonds, diamonds. I realized with a cold jolt the vintage art deco necklace and earrings from the safe at home. The theft was so brazen it was almost impressive. I accepted a flute of champagne from a passing waiter, but didn't drink. I moved through the crowd, a glacier parting a sea of silk and suits. I saw the glances, the quick, hushed conversations. That's her, Natalie Bishop. She's back. Did you hear what happened in the dining room? Old colleagues from the venture capital world approached. Natalie, God, it's good to see you. Looking strong. Their handshakes were firm, their eyes curious. I traded pleasantries, deflected questions about my health, and steered every conversation back to Ethel's core technology, its real value. It was a subtle reframing, a whisper campaign against Christopher's grand Nexus narrative. Then, I felt her presence before I saw her, a cloud of overpowering jasmine and malice. Natalie, you came. Jasmine's voice was a sugary drawl. She detached from Christopher and slithered her way over, a predator's smile on her lips. I wasn't sure you'd feel up to such a stimulating environment. I turned, letting my gaze travel slowly from her face down to the diamonds at her throat. Jasmine, that's quite a statement piece. So bold. She preened, a hand fluttering to the necklace. A gift. From Christopher. He said they were meant to be worn, not locked away in the dark. He's always been generous with company assets. I said, my tone neutral. Tell me, how are you finding the Prometheus integration challenges? Resolved the memory leak issues on the high-throughput modules yet? Her smile flickered. She hadn't expected shop talk. The team is making excellent progress. The new architecture is inherently more robust. Inherently robust isn't a technical specification. It's a marketing slogan. The logs from the sandbox environment tell a different story. Multiple cascading failures under load. I've copied you on the report. I took a tiny sip of champagne. You should really read your own team's updates before the investors start asking questions. The mask of pleasantry cracked. Fury flashed in her eyes. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a venomous hiss only I could hear. You think you're so clever, don't you? Scurrying around, digging up old code. You're a ghost. Natalie, a pathetic, sick ghost he can't wait to be rid of. Everyone here pities you. They see a desperate, aging woman clinging to her husband's coattails. I didn't flinch. I smiled, a cold, thin curve of my lips. They see the woman who wrote the algorithm that pays for your dress and my diamonds. They see the co-founder. What do they see when they look at you? Jasmine, besides a very expensive accessory with a questionable understanding of distributed systems. She recoiled as if slapped. The composure she'd been clinging to shattered. Her hand, the one holding her own champagne flute, trembled with rage. You bitter, dried-up hag. She spat, the words meant for my ears only. You had your time. Now it's mine. This company, Christopher, all of it. He's going to put you in a nice, quiet little box where you belong. And I'm going to be the one holding the key. A box. I mused, my voice still calm, like the one in the Hamptons, the one with the lovely water view, and the biometric locks that according to the property management logs, have only ever recognized two fingerprints, yours and his? I let that sink in. Watched the color drain from her expertly made-up face. Funny, I don't recall authorizing that as a company asset. Must have been one of those strategic advisory decisions. Her breath hitched. She knew. She knew I knew. The carefully constructed fiction of the mentorship, the professional partnership, evaporated between us. All that was left was the ugly, naked truth of the affair and the theft. Panic and rage warred in her eyes. And rage won. You have no idea what you're dealing with. She seethed, her voice rising. She took an unsteady step forward, her hand jerking. The deep red wine in her glass arced through the air. A perfect, glinting parabola. It didn't splash, it poured. A deliberate, targeted torrent, soaking the front of my ivory dress in a spectacular, spreading stain. Gasps rippled through our immediate vicinity. Conversations died. Jasmine's hand flew to her mouth. A pantomime of horror. Oh my God, Natalie, I'm so sorry. It was an accident. You just startled me. Going on about property logs and all that ancient history. Her voice was loud, shrill, meant to carry. Here, let me help you. She grabbed a linen napkin from a nearby table and made a show of dabbing, clumsily, viciously, at the stain, grinding the wine deeper into the silk. I stood perfectly still. I let her perform. I let the room watch. I didn't look at the ruin of my dress. I looked at her, at the triumphant gleam in her eyes beneath the feigned concern. She thought she'd won. She'd marked me, humiliated me, turned me into a dripping, pathetic mess. Christopher materialized at her side, his face a mask of concern. Natalie, for heaven's sake. Jasmine didn't mean it. It was an accident. He put a possessive arm around Jasmine's shoulders, pulling her away from me. The message was clear. Us versus you. That's when I moved. I didn't step back. I stepped forward, into the space between them, forcing Christopher to drop his arm. The sodden, ruined silk of my dress pressed against his pristine tuxedo. I ignored him. I kept my eyes locked on Jasmine. My voice, when it came, was not loud. It was low, clear, and carried in the rapt silence with the precision of a scalpel. An accident. Of course. I glanced down at the stain, then back up at her. This is Valentino. Fall 2024 couture. Untreated silk. The Cabernet. Assuming it's the 2018 Opus one they're serving, is particularly high in tannins. It will have bonded with the fibers permanently. The dress is destroyed. Its value is approximately $85,000. Jasmine blinked, thrown by the cold. Financial assessment of her petty vandalism. I continued, my gaze sweeping to include the ring of fascinated, horrified onlookers that investors, journalists, board members. But a dress is just a dress. What's more concerning is your approach to due diligence. Jasmine, this carelessness, it mirrors your approach to the Prometheus integration. Rushed, ill-considered, prone to catastrophic spills. I paused, letting the metaphor hang. For instance, before you decided to bet Ethel's entire data infrastructure on an open-source framework, did you bother to research the company that actually holds the foundational patents for its core predictive model? A little firm called Viridian Systems. Based in Austin, Jasmine's face went blank. She had no idea what I was talking about. I saw Christopher's eyes widen in dawning horror. He hadn't done the diligence either. Viridian filed a sweeping patent infringement suit just this afternoon, I said, addressing the crowd now, against 3 major tech firms using Prometheus in a commercial capacity. The litigation will take years, but it creates a massive cloud of uncertainty. Any company building its future on that code base is now building on quicksand. I turned my full attention back to Jasmine, who looked like she'd been gut-punched. You've committed Ethel to a multi-million-dollar, 2-year migration to a technology that is now the primary target of the biggest IP lawsuit in a decade. And you never saw it coming. I took the stained napkin from her limp hand and dropped it on the floor. That, Jasmine, is not an accident. That is gross negligence. An $85,000 dress is a triviality. Betting the future of this company on a house of cards because you were too busy playing. I let my eyes flicker to Christopher's ashen face, then back to hers. Strategic advisor is a firing offense. The silence was absolute. Then, a low murmur began to spread. I saw Carl from finance hiding a smile behind his hand. I saw investors exchanging grim looks. I saw a tech journalist frantically typing on her phone. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked, the ruined dress clinging to me, a banner of her humiliation and my resolve. I didn't go to the bathroom. I walked straight out of the party, the sea of people parting before me, and into the waiting night. My phone buzzed in my clutch as the town car pulled away. A text from an unknown number. This time, it was a series of images, crystal clear, telephoto lens shots. Christopher and Jasmine, wrapped around each other on a sprawling deck overlooking the ocean. The Hamptons' house. The timestamp was from last weekend. Then, a PDF, a bank statement for Hermes Ventures, a $2 million transfer from Palace Consulting, and the beneficiary account for that transfer? A joint checking account, under the names Christopher Bishop and Jasmine Reyes. Told you they were sloppy. The paper trail is a highway. More where this came from. Your friend. I leaned back against the leather seat. The cold, wet, silk, uncomfortable against my skin. I didn't feel the chill. I felt a fierce, burning warmth. The spark had been struck. The accidental revelation wasn't the wine. It was Jasmine's own spite, illuminating her incompetence for all to see. And the evidence was now a weapon. I opened my contacts and called the number Vivian, the crisis PR expert, had given me. Vivian, it's Natalie Bishop. We need to meet first thing tomorrow. The narrative is about to change. I have the proof. I looked out at the blur of city lights, a hard smile touching my lips, and I'm ready to go to war. The penthouse was no longer a gilded cage. It was a command center. The morning after the gala, I'd had the stained Valentino dress sealed in a garment bag. It wasn't trash, it was evidence. Exhibit A in the case of Bishop versus the illusion. Now, sunlight streamed into the living room, illuminating a different kind of battlefield. My dining table, strewn with printouts, laptops, and the calm, focused energy of Ethan Cole and his associate. It's a slam dunk on the breach of fiduciary duty, Ethan said, tapping a sheaf of papers. His associate, a sharp-eyed woman named Priya, nodded in agreement. The paper trail from Palace Consulting to Hermes Ventures to the joint account is a direct line. He was funneling company money, shareholder money, your money, into a slush fund for himself and his girlfriend. The amounts are enough for a criminal referral, not just civil. And the Hamptons property? I asked, my voice steady. I was dressed in a crisp white shirt and slacks, my armor for the day, purchased by Ethel Holdings, the parent company. Priya supplied, pulling up a title record on her screen. The mortgage payments, taxes, utilities all paid from a company account he controlled. He listed it as an executive retreat facility, but the access logs and the photographic evidence show exclusive personal use. That's misappropriation of corporate assets. Plain and simple. Ethan leaned forward. Then we have the patent fraud. Adding Jasmine Reyes as a co-inventor on your work to bolster her standing and, likely, to grant her a claim on future royalties. That's intellectual property theft. It's fraud on the USPTO. We have the commit logs from Marcus showing she contributed 0 lines of code to the original algorithms. He spread the documents out like a prosecutor laying out a case. Now we have enough to go to the DA's office right now. We have enough to file a civil suit tomorrow that would tie him and the company in knots for years. The question is, What's the endgame? Do you want him in handcuffs? Do you want to burn the company down to save it? Or do you want to take it back? I looked at the damning proof, the bank statements, the deeds, the photos of them laughing on that deck. Paid for by the sweat of my genius. The fury was a cold, hard diamond in my chest. But I didn't want to smash everything. I wanted to reclaim what was mine. I want the company. I said, I want him out. I want her gone. I want my name cleared on the patents. And I want Liam's future secure. A criminal case is messy. It takes forever. And it destroys value. A civil war inside the boardroom is faster. But it's still a war. I want to surrender. Ethan's lips curved into a thin, understanding smile. A siege. Then, we show him the walls are mined. The gates are burning. And the only way out is to walk away with the clothes on his back. He pulled a fresh document from his briefcase. This is a draft settlement agreement. It's a fantasy document. It demands his immediate resignation as CEO and from the board. It demands the clawback of every dime misappropriated, plus punitive damages. It demands the immediate reversal of the patent amendments. It demands his remaining shares be placed in a voting trust you control. It gives you full, undisputed custody of Liam, with him getting supervised visitation only if a court approves. And it leaves him personally responsible for all legal fees. I scanned the brutal, beautiful terms. He'll never sign this. Of course not, Ethan said. It's not for signing. It's for showing. We deliver this to him, with a cover letter from me stating that we have compiled the attached evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty, and are prepared to file both civil claims and refer the matter to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office within 48 hours unless he agrees to enter good faith negotiations based on these terms. The goal isn't to get this. The goal is to scare him so badly he agrees to give us most of it. The board. I said, we need the board. He controls the parent company board. I need to peel off his support. That's the political play. Ethan nodded. And that's where you come in. You need to talk to Silas Quint. Silas Quint, our first major angel investor, a cantankerous, brilliant old venture capitalist who cared about two things: the integrity of the technology and the return on his investment. He'd never liked Christopher's flash, but he'd tolerated it because the numbers were good. He'd been a silent supporter of mine from the start. I've already reached out. I said, breakfast tomorrow at his club, the Regency. Old school. Good. He's the key. If Silas flips, others will follow. They're all nervous after the gala. The Viridian patent lawsuit you exposed is the talk of the town. It makes Jasmine look incompetent and Christopher look like a fool who can't control his star employee. Ethan's tone was dry. The narrative is shifting. The Wunderkind is now a liability. The visionary CEO is distracted. My phone buzzed. A calendar alert. All hands. Jasmine Reyes promotion announcement. 2 p.m. I showed it to Ethan. He's doubling down. Promoting her. A show of force. It's a mistake, Priya observed. It looks like rewarding failure. And it looks personal. It is personal. I said, standing up. That's his weakness. He's emotional. He's trying to prove to her, to himself, to everyone, that I don't matter. That's when people make fatal errors. I looked at the settlement draft. Send it. Today. After the announcement. Let him have his moment in the sun. Then have the shadows come for him. The all-hands meeting was held in the main atrium, a soaring glass space that usually felt inspiring. Now felt suffocating. The entire company was there, a sea of anxious faces. The gala story had spread in whispered, exaggerated fragments. I stood at the back, leaning against a wall, invisible in the crowd. Christopher took the stage, radiating a confidence that felt brittle. Team Ethel, we stand at a precipice of greatness. He began, his voice echoing. He spoke of audacity, of the future, of not being shackled by the past. It was a not-so-subtle dig, and everyone knew it. Then he brought Jasmine on stage. She glowed with triumph, dressed in a severe, powerful white suit, a deliberate mimicry of my own style. I noted with cold amusement. She was now vice president of product strategy and innovation. The promotion was massive, skipping multiple layers. The murmurs in the crowd were audible. Jasmine embodies the fearless, forward-thinking spirit that will define Ethel's next chapter. Christopher boomed, putting an arm around her shoulders. The gesture was possessive, proprietary. She has my full, unwavering confidence. Jasmine took the microphone. Thank you, Chris. The familiar use of his first name, in this setting, was another cannon shot across the bow. I am so honored to lead us into the Nexus era. To those who doubt, who cling to outdated models, her eyes scanned the crowd. And I knew she was looking for me. I say, get on board or get out of the way. The train is leaving the station. It was a declaration of war, couched in corporate pep. The applause from her faction was loud. From the rest, it was polite, hesitant. I saw Marcus, arms crossed, face stone. I saw Anya from legal, steadying her shoes. As the crowd dispersed, I felt a presence beside me. It was David Chin, the head of engineering, a man of few words and immense integrity. He didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead at the now empty stage. The Prometheus commit logs are a disaster, he said quietly, his voice barely above a murmur. She forced the team to push to production to meet a demo deadline. It's full of memory leaks. It'll crash under real load. We're trying to fix it in secret, but it's a house of cards. He finally turned his head, his eyes weary. She doesn't listen. She just demands. And he backs her every play. It's going to break. Natalie. Soon. How soon? I asked. The big client demo. For AstraCorp. In 3 weeks. It's the cornerstone of the Nexus rollout. If it fails, he didn't need to finish. My team is good. We might be able to patch it, bandage it, but it's fundamentally flawed. The whole architecture is wrong. Just like you said, don't patch it, David. I said softly. He looked at me, shocked. What? Let it be wrong. Let it fail. The client, it's a $50 million contract. A $50 million contract for a product built on a lie. By a VP who got her job on her back. Funded by stolen money. I said, my voice like ice. Sometimes you have to let the infection come to a head before you can cut it out. Document everything. Every warning you gave. Every corner she forced you to cut. Save it somewhere safe. Not on the company's servers. Understanding dawned in his eyes, mixed with fear. He'll fire me. He'll fire my whole team if it blows up. He won't be in a position to fire anyone. I said, trust me. He held my gaze for a long moment, then gave a single, grim nod. The logs will be clean. The warnings will be documented. He melted back into the stream of employees. My phone vibrated. A text from Ethan. Package delivered. Certified mail to his office. His club. And the penthouse. The noose is in the air. I allowed myself a small, cold smile. The promotion was the height of his arrogance. The legal papers were the consequences, arriving at his doorstep. I spent the afternoon in my office. The silence a bomb. I was reviewing the patent prior art research when my email pinged. It was a system notification. Your access to the Q3 budget and staffing forecast files has been revoked. Please contact your supervisor for inquiries. A minute later, a formal email from Christopher arrived, copied to HR and finance. Natalie, in light of the company's strategic refocus under Jasmine's leadership on the Nexus project, and to eliminate redundancy, your department's budget for the next quarter is being reallocated, effective immediately. Your open requisitions for strategic analysts are frozen. Please direct any operational needs to Jasmine's office for prioritization. We believe this consolidation will drive greater efficiency. Christopher, it was a blatant, desperate move. He was trying to strangle me operationally, to make me irrelevant, to push me out. He thought cutting off my resources would make me give up, or lash out emotionally. He was treating me like Jasmine would dealt with petty, personal spite. I didn't feel anger. I felt a grim satisfaction. He'd taken the bait. He'd shown his hand as a small, vindictive man, not a CEO. I hit reply, copying the same list. Christopher. Noted. I will, of course, comply with all budget directives. My focus remains on my core mandate as CSO, evaluating existential strategic risks. The Viridian lawsuit against the Prometheus framework certainly qualifies. My preliminary risk assessment, which you'll find attached, suggests a 92% probability of a cascading failure during a high-load client demo, such as the upcoming AstraCorp presentation, potentially resulting in total data corruption and nine-figure liability. I recommend an immediate change of course. Given the urgency, I've taken the liberty of scheduling a briefing for the board's risk committee tomorrow. Natalie, I attached a 5-page document. The first page was real, full of dire technical warnings. The other 4 were gibberish, placeholder text. It didn't matter. The seed of doubt was planted. The risk committee was just Silas and 2 others. But Christopher wouldn't know that. 10 minutes later, my office phone rang. It was him. His voice was a low, furious snarl, meant for my ears only. What the hell is this? Natalie, a threat? You're trying to sabotage the AstraCorp demo? I'm doing my job. Christopher, I said, my voice calm, identifying risks. The sabotage, if any, was embedding the company on a framework you didn't vet, led by a VP you promoted for reasons that have nothing to do with her competence. I'm just connecting the dots. Did you get the package from my lawyer? The silence on the other end was profound. I could almost hear the blood draining from his face. You bitch. He breathed. You vindictive, scheming bitch. You'll never get away with this. This is my company. You should read the documents. Christopher, I said softly, the embezzlement, the fraud, the photos, the joint bank account. Ethan is very, very good. The DA will be fascinated. The board will be horrified. Your new girlfriend will be subpoenaed. It's all there. Every dirty little secret. Think about that during Jasmine's celebratory dinner tonight. I'm sure the 2 of you have so much to celebrate. I hung up. The call had lasted less than a minute. It was all the time I needed. He was scared. He was angry. And scared. Angry men make mistakes. I picked up my purse and left the office. I had a much more important meeting to prepare for. One that didn't involve my husband. I drove to Liam's preschool, watching him on the playground. A small, joyful figure careening down a slide. His laugh was the only thing that could warm the cold diamond of fury in my chest. This wasn't just about a company anymore. It was about the man who would teach my son what it meant to be a man. And Christopher Bishop was failing that test spectacularly. I would not let that failure be my son's inheritance. The siege was underway. The walls were trembling. And tomorrow, I would meet with Silas Quint to discuss the terms of surrender. Silas Quint's handshake was dry and firm, like parchment over bone. The Regency dining room was a sepia-toned monument to old money and discretion, smelling of polish, leather, and very old scotch. He didn't smile, just gestured for me to sit. Natalie, you look formidable. His voice was a low rumble, not like someone who's been convalescing. I haven't been. Silas, I've been observing, recovering, planning. I didn't touch the menu. This wasn't a social call. I heard about the gala. Quite the scene. Made a lot of my friends in venture very nervous. This Viridian lawsuit that you're certain? I've had our outside counsel confirm it. The filing is a matter of public record. Jasmine Reyes committed Ethel to a technological path that is now a legal and financial minefield. Christopher either didn't do the diligence, or he ignored it. Silas grunted, sipping his mineral water. The girl is a problem. Flash. No foundation. But Christopher backs her. Staked his reputation on her. He fixed me with his sharp, bird-like eyes. But that's not why you asked to see me. This isn't about product roadmaps. This is about the throne room. What do you have? No more games. I opened the folder I'd brought. Not the full dossier Ethan had compiled. That was the nuclear option, but a précis. A summary of the Palace to Hermes money trail. A copy of the patent amendments, adding Jasmine as an inventor. A single, high-resolution photograph of Christopher and Jasmine entwined on the Hamptons deck. The Ethelone property with the ocean in the background. I slid the folder across the starched white linen. Silas put on his reading glasses. The silence that followed was long, broken only by the faint clink of silverware from another table. His face, a landscape of wrinkles and shrewd intelligence, didn't change, but a vein ticked in his temple. When he finally looked up, his eyes were cold. Stupid, he said. The word is soft. Final judgment, vulgarly, monumentally stupid, funneling company funds into a love nest, putting his mistress's name on your work. He tapped the photograph, and indiscreet. Does he think he's the first man to be led around by his dick? But to do it with such amateurish greed, it's an insult. To the company, to the investors, to you. The board of the holding company is stacked with his votes. I said, my voice steady. He can block any action I try to take at the parent level. But the operating company board, they haven't seen this. If they do, the liability to Ethel, to all of you, becomes existential. This isn't just bad judgment. Silas, it's fraud. The SEC, the day they'd pick the bones clean. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. What do you want? I want you to vote your shares in the operating company to remove him as CEO. I want you to persuade Arthur and Penelope to do the same. Arthur and Penelope were the other two major early investors, both of whom respected Silas more than they liked Christopher. And in return, you get a CEO who understands the core technology, who didn't bet the company on a plagiarized, lawsuit magnet framework, and who will prioritize stability and actual innovation over vanity projects and embezzlement. You get a company that isn't a headline away from a federal investigation, and you get your company back. He stated, I get to save the company I built. I corrected, and you get to protect your investment. It's not a return. Silas, it's the only viable exit from this catastrophe. He studied me for a long minute. You were always the brains. Natalie, the steel. He was the salesman. He said the word like a curse. Very well. Show me the rest. The full picture. If it's as bad as this teaser, you'll have my vote. I'll talk to Arthur and Penelope. But we move fast. And we move clean. No public bloodbath until the coup is complete. The board meeting is in 2 weeks. I said, for the quarterly results. That's our window. Then we have 2 weeks to prepare a regicide. Silas said, a grim hint of a smile on his lips. Send the files to my private server, the encrypted one. As I left the Regency, the weight on my shoulders felt different, lighter, yet more focused. I had my first, crucial ally. The battle lines were being drawn not in the press, not in the courtroom yet, but in the quiet, wood-paneled rooms where real power was brokered. The following days were a study in surreal contrasts. At Ethel, I was a ghost in the machine. My budget gone. My authority publicly stripped. I was a non-entity. Jasmine held court, her promotion having inflated her arrogance to stratospheric levels. She strutted the halls, issuing imperious commands, surrounding herself with sycophants. Christopher was a tense, shadowy presence, avoiding me, his eyes bloodshot. Ethan's settlement package had done its work. He was trapped, and he knew it. His only play was to try to strong-arm me out before I could act. At home, the silence was a thick, frozen thing. We moved around each other like planets in a dead solar system. He'd taken to sleeping in the guest wing. The only communication was terse notes about Liam's schedule. The divorce papers, I knew, were coming. He'd try to file first, to set the narrative, but he was too late. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. It was Eleanor Bishop, Christopher's mother. Her voice was crisp, patrician, laced with a concern that sounded more like social anxiety. Natalie, darling, we're in the city, just for a night. Christopher said you've been back at the firm. How wonderful. We'd love to see you and dear Liam. Dinner? At the penthouse? Just family. It's been so long. Just family. The words were a minefield. Eleanor and Charles, Bishop of Greenwich. Connecticut. Old money. Older manners. Appearance was their religion. Lineage their sacrament. They'd never fully approved of me, that I was a scholarship girl with too many opinions, but they adored Liam. And they tolerated me as the necessary vessel for their grandson. Christopher, their golden boy, could do no wrong in their eyes. This dinner was his move. A play for normalcy. A chance to present a united front. To soothe their inevitable questions about the unfortunate gossip they'd surely heard. He thought he could manage me. Control the narrative for one evening. I saw the trap. And I saw the opportunity. A more private, more devastating theater than the gala. Of course. Eleanor, I said, my voice warm. Empty. I'd love to. Just family. I'll have Marta prepare something simple. I called Ethan immediately. They're coming. Tonight. The parents. A pause. Do you want an out? I can have a family emergency ready in 10 minutes. No, I said, looking out at the skyline. No, I think it's time for a family intervention. Are the papers ready? The clean, non-whistleblower version? The divorce filing? Yes. Grounds. Irreconcilable differences. It's boilerplate. Vanilla. It doesn't mention the embezzlement or the girlfriend. Yet, it's the crowbar to start the split. Bring them to me. Before 7. The penthouse was too clean, too quiet. Marta, our housekeeper, had laid out a cold supper of poached salmon and asparagus, elegant and bloodless. Liam, a beacon of uncomplicated joy, was the only source of light, chattering about his preschool friends. I'd arranged for Marta to take him to the park until the adults finished eating, to shield him from what was to come. He left with a hug, blissfully unaware. Christopher arrived just before his parents, his face a mask of strained joviality. He was wearing the uniform, the cashmere sweater, the casual slacks, the look of effortless wasp perfection. He poured himself a hefty scotch the moment he entered. Just be normal. Natalie, he said, his back to me, his voice low and tense. For God's sake, for Liam's sake, just get through dinner. They're my parents. Have some respect. Respect is earned. Christopher, I said, smoothing my simple black dress. Not performed. The elevator chimed. Eleanor swept in, a vision in pearls and taupe, air-kissing cheeks. Charles followed, a solid, silent man who communicated mostly through grunts and a perpetual look of slight disapproval. The greetings were performed, the pleasantries exchanged. How was the traffic from Greenwich? Charming. How was the firm? Thriving. Absolutely thriving. And dear Liam? So big. Photos must be taken. We sat at the polished dining table. The conversation was a delicate dance on thin ice. Charles held forth on the market. Eleanor gossiped about people I didn't know. Christopher played the attentive son, laughing at the right moments, refilling wine glasses. I played the serene wife, nodding, smiling a small, tight smile. Then, over the lemon tart, Eleanor aimed her benign gaze at Christopher. Darling, we saw that lovely piece in the journal about your new vice president. Jasmine, was it? She seems terribly dynamic. So young to have such vision. Here it was. Yes, mother. Jasmine is a once-in-a-generation talent. Christopher said, a rehearsed warmth in his voice. She's the driving force behind our entire new platform. The future of Ethel. How impressive. Eleanor trilled. And so photogenic. You two made such a striking pair in the pictures from that charity thing. The one at the museum. The air in the room thickened. Christopher's smile didn't waver, but a muscle ticked in his jaw. It's important to present a strong, unified leadership front. Of course, of course, Eleanor said, taking a delicate sip of water. It's just so nice to see you with such vibrant colleagues. It must be so stimulating for you, Natalie, to be back in that energetic environment after being away for so long. Her tone was sweet, but the barb dot after being away that was perfectly placed. The invalid wife, graciously allowed back to watch her replacement shine. I put my fork down. The sound was tiny, but it cut through the conversation. I looked at Eleanor, then at Charles, then finally at Christopher. I didn't speak. I just watched him, my expression calm, expectant, just like in the executive dining room. He shifted in his seat. Mother, please. Natalie's contributions are foundational. It's a different kind of energy. I'm sure, Eleanor said, not sounding sure at all. I let the silence stretch. Then, I spoke, my voice clear and measured, cutting the polite chatter like a knife. Vibrant is one word for her. Eleanor, expensive is another. The consulting fees alone are quite staggering. I turned my head slowly to Christopher. Aren't they, darling? For Palace Consulting? What exactly was it they advised on again? The strategic allocation of company funds into a joint checking account? Or was it the interior design specifications for the Hamptons property? The color drained from Christopher's face. Charles stopped chewing, his fork hovering in midair. Eleanor blinked. Confused. I'm sorry, dear? A consulting firm? Christopher found his voice. A strangled sound. Natalie, for God's sake, not now. Not at the dinner table. This is company business. It's inappropriate. No. Christopher, I said, my voice still quiet, lethally calm. This is family business. Because the money you've been funneling to your mistress, and the house you bought for her with company funds, and the patents you're putting her name on to steal the value of my work. That doesn't just affect the company. It affects Liam's future. It affects the inheritance your parents so cherish. It is the very definition of family business. Eleanor's hand flew to her pearls. Mistress? Christopher, what is she talking about? She's hysterical. Christopher spat, his composure shattering. She's been ill. She's not well. She's imagining things. I reached for the manila envelope I'd placed on the empty chair beside me. I didn't pull out the photos. I pulled out 2 sheets of paper. I slid the first, one toward Charles, the financial brain of the family. It was a simplified flowchart Ethan had prepared. Ethel Funds, Palace Consulting. Hermes Ventures, joint account. C. Bishop J. Reyes, the amounts were circled in red. This is embezzlement. Charles, I said, as if explaining a balance sheet. Plain and simple. The consulting firm is a shell. The beneficiary is a shared account with his vice president. Charles's face, usually ruddy, turned a mottled purple. He stared at the paper, his breath coming in short puffs. I slid the second sheet to Eleanor. It was the patent amendment, highlighting Jasmine Reyes's name added as a co-inventor next to mine. And this is fraud, putting his girlfriend's name on the work I did, alone, for years, to enrich her, to justify her position, to cut me out of my own legacy. Eleanor's face was a mask of horrified disbelief. This girl, the one from the paper, you're involved with her, and you're giving her company money? Our grandson's money? Her world, built on propriety and appearances, was collapsing. Christopher was on his feet, his chair screeching back. Those are forgeries, lies. She's trying to destroy me because she's jealous. She's sick. He was shouting, spittle flying. The golden boy replaced by a cornered, raging animal. I didn't move. I just looked at him, and then at his shattered parents. I've been through a lot, I said, my voice finally gaining a trace of the emotion I'd locked away. But I am not sick. I am not jealous. I am a woman who built a company with her husband, only to watch him try to steal it with his mistress while I was recovering from giving birth to his child. I stood up, my movements precise. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you deserved the truth. Liam deserves the truth. I picked up the envelope, leaving the damning papers on the table before them. The divorce papers will be filed tomorrow. I will be seeking full custody, given the evidence of financial malfeasance and moral unfitness. I don't expect it will be contested for long. I looked at Christopher, who was shaking, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and pure hatred. My lawyer will be in touch about the corporate side. I'd advise you to get your own. A good one. I walked out of the dining room. Behind me, I heard Eleanor's choked sob, Charles's roar of "What have you done?" and the sound of Christopher trying and failing to form words. I didn't go to Liam's room. I went to my study, closed the door, and leaned against it. The cold, controlled fury that had sustained me was gone, replaced by a hollow, shaking exhaustion, and then a grim, profound sense of finality. The private facade was shattered. The last bastion of Christopher's carefully constructed life that his parents' unconditional regard was in ruins. The war was no longer just in the boardroom. It was in his family, in his home. There was no going back. I picked up my phone. There was a text from Ethan, sent an hour ago. Papers delivered. The first move is yours. I typed my reply, my fingers steady on the glass. The first move is made. The king is in check. Proceed with the board. It's time. The 2 weeks between the dinner and the quarterly board meeting were a silent, pressurized vacuum. Christopher had fled the penthouse that night, after his father's apoplectic shouts had subsided into a cold, disgusted silence. I didn't know where he went, likely to the Hamptons, to Jasmine, to the crumbling sanctuary of their shared fantasy. The divorce papers, delivered the next morning by courier to his office, went unanswered. His lawyer, a slick corporate fixer named Robert Gage, sent a single-line email to Ethan. My client categorically denies all allegations and will be pursuing claims of defamation and tortious interference. It was the expected, blustering response, the sound of a man with no ground to stand on, stomping his feet. My ground, however, was solidifying by the hour. Silas Quint had been as good as his word. The regicide was in motion. He, Arthur Block, and Penelope Vance, the 3 earliest and largest investors after me that had reviewed Ethan's full dossier. Their response was not moral outrage, but cold, pragmatic fury. Their money was being stolen, their investment endangered by a CEO's adolescent indiscretions and criminal stupidity. They'd signed the voting proxy agreements, granting me control of their shares for the purpose of the upcoming board vote. With their blocks in mine, I commanded 51% of the voting power in the operating company boardroom, the holding company board. With Christopher's insurmountable control was a longer-term problem, but removing him as CEO of the operating entity was the first. Vital decapitation. My other preparations were more visceral. David Chin, the head of engineering, had been true to his word. The patches applied to the Nexus demo for AstroCorp were cosmetic. A digital Potemkin village. The core instability remained. A ticking bomb. More importantly, he'd provided a treasure trove. Internal Slack logs where Jasmine overruled his technical warnings with phrases like, "Chris wants it this way, and don't be a bottleneck to innovation." He'd also quietly reached out to a junior product manager on Jasmine's team, a sharp woman named Chloe, who was weary of being a sycophant. Chloe, for the promise of a protected future, had provided something even more valuable, a cell phone video. She was celebrating her promotion. Chloe had said, her voice hushed over a secure line. At the Boom Boom Room, really drunk, she was holding court with some of her hires, bragging. I think she forgot I was there, or she just didn't care. The video was 20 seconds of gold. Jasmine, flushed and glittering, slurring into the camera one of her friends was holding. And that dried up hag thinks she can just waltz back in? Please, Chris is going to put her in a home for rich, boring ghosts. The company is mine. He promised. The house, the patents, the corner office, it's all just a matter of time. She had her turn. Now it's mine. And I'm not sharing. It was a perfect, unvarnished glimpse into her sense of entitlement and Christopher's empty promises. It was also a gift-wrapped admission of motive. The morning of the board meeting dawned. Gray and drizzling. I dressed in a navy power suit. My hair pulled back in a severe knot. No jewelry except for my wedding band. I'd keep it on until the vote was done. A reminder, to them and to me, of the broken covenant at the heart of this fight. I arrived at Ethel an hour before the meeting was scheduled. The building had a strange, expectant quiet. I went not to my office, but directly to the boardroom on the top floor. My ally, Marcus from IT, was already there, fiddling with the massive wall-mounted screen. He gave me a grim nod. All set, Nat. The feeds are isolated. No one can remote in or kill it from the outside. The playbacks are queued. It's your show. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Just get us back to building things that work, he said, and slipped out. I took my seat at the long, obsidian table, not in my usual place as CSO. Halfway down, I took the seat at the very foot of the table, directly opposite where Christopher, as CEO, would sit at the head. It was a subtle, powerful reclamation of space. One by one, the board members filtered in. Silas arrived with Arthur and Penelope. Their greetings to me were curt, professional nods. No warmth, but a profound sense of aligned purpose. The other members point to VCs from later funding rounds. The independent director, a retired politician who owed Christopher a favor, and the CFO, a nervous man named Bernard who'd signed off on the palace payments, took their seats, eyeing my presence at the foot of the table with confusion. At exactly 10 minutes to the hour, the doors swung open. Christopher entered with Jasmine on his heels. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week, his tan looking sallow under the harsh lights, but he was dressed for battle in his most commanding suit. Jasmine was a vision of aggressive femininity in blood red, her expression one of haughty contempt. They were a united front, a king and his would-be queen entering to quell a minor rebellion. Christopher stopped short when he saw me at the far end. His eyes narrowed. Natalie, the board meeting is for directors and officers. As CSO, your place is right here. Christopher, I said, my voice cutting through the room. As the holder of a controlling proxy of voting shares for this meeting, Silas, Arthur, and Penelope have granted me their voting rights on the matters at hand today. I gestured to the empty seat beside me. Jasmine, you can wait outside. This is a board meeting, not a staff briefing. Jasmine's face flushed crimson. How dare you? I'm the VP of... You're an employee. Silas Quint's gravelly voice interrupted, cold and final, and not a particularly competent one. From what I've seen, wait outside. She looked to Christopher, her eyes pleading, furious. He was staring at me, then at Silas, the blood draining from his face as he understood the betrayal. The ground was shifting under his feet. Jasmine, it's fine. Wait in my office. This won't take long. Sputtering, she shot me a look of pure venom and stormed out, the door clicking shut with a sound of finality. Christopher took his seat at the head, trying to reclaim the initiative. Very well. Let's call this meeting to order. Bernard, the Q, 3 numbers. If you please. Bernard, the CFO, began stammering through a presentation on revenue targets. The numbers were good, a testament to the underlying strength of the company I'd built. Not Christopher's leadership. The board listened, but the tension was a live wire in the air. When Bernard finished, Christopher pounced. Excellent, strong, durable growth, which is why the timing is perfect for the full pivot to Nexus. As championed by Jasmine, the future is a patent infringement lawsuit and a fundamentally unstable code base. I said, not raising my voice. All heads turn to me. Before we vote on any strategic pivots, there is a matter of grave fiduciary risk that must be addressed. A risk created by the CEO's personal misconduct and poor judgment. Christopher slammed his hand on the table. This is outrageous. This is a personal vendetta, and I will not have the board's time wasted. It is the board's duty. Silas intoned. Let her speak. Christopher, we've all heard the rumors. Let's hear the facts. I stood up. The facts are these. First, the technological risk. I nodded to Marcus, who was watching through the glass wall of the AV booth. The main screen lit up with David Chen's simplified architecture diagram, highlighting the Prometheus core. The Nexus platform is built on an open-source framework, Prometheus, which is now the subject of a massive, credible patent lawsuit by Viridian Systems. I advanced the slide to the court filing. Our CEO and his VP committed the company to this path without conducting basic intellectual property due diligence. The potential liability is in the hundreds of millions. Furthermore, I advanced to the next slide, showing error logs and performance collapse graphs. The platform is technically unsound. The engineering team's repeated warnings were overruled. I played a clipped audio file that a meeting recording David had made. Jasmine's voice, sharp and dismissive. I don't care about the memory allocation issues. David, make it work for the demo. Chris is betting everything on this. Murmurs around the table. The independent director shifted uncomfortably. This is selective editing. Sour grapes from a resistant employee. Christopher shouted. Second, I continued, as if he hadn't spoken. The financial risk. The slide changed to Ethan's clean flowchart. Ethel, Palace, Hermes joint account. A photo of the joint account statement, with the names, appeared next to it. Gasps filled the room. Bernard, the CFO, looked like he wanted to vomit. Over the last 18 months, approximately $8 million has been funneled from Ethel, through a shell consulting company, into a personal joint checking account shared by Christopher Bishop and Jasmine Reyes. This is not a salary. This is not a bonus. This is misappropriation, embezzlement, lies, forgeries. Christopher was on his feet now, leaning on the table, his knuckles white. She's fabricated all of this. The bank records are from the bank. Christopher, I said softly, subpoenable. The third risk, fraud. The patent amendment document appeared to justify Jasmine Reyes's rapid promotion and her claim to the company's value. Christopher has fraudulently added her as a co-inventor to the core Ethel patents I developed alone, years before she was hired. This is fraud on the U.S. Patent Office. It devalues our core intellectual property and opens us up to invalidation challenges. The board was in an uproar. The two younger VCs were yelling questions at Bernard. The independent director was shaking his head. And finally, I said, my voice rising to cut through the chaos. I nodded to Marcus one last time. The reputational and governance risk. The video from the boom boom room filled the screen. Jasmine's drunken, triumphant face, her slurred words echoing in the suddenly silent, tomb-like boardroom. That dried-up hag. Chris is going to put her in a home. The company is mine, he promised. The video ended. The screen went black. The silence was absolute, profound. Christopher was pale, shrunken in his chair. The performance was over. The truth was in the room, naked and ugly. I remained standing. The CEO of this company is engaged in a relationship with a subordinate. He has funneled corporate funds to her. He has committed fraud to enrich her. He has ignored catastrophic business risks to pursue a strategy she championed. He has violated his duty of care, his duty of loyalty, and likely several state and federal laws. He has made this company vulnerable to financial, legal, and reputational ruin. I looked at each director in turn. Therefore, I move that the board of Ethel Technologies immediately vote to remove Christopher Bishop as Chief Executive Officer and as a director of this board. For cause. Second the motion. Silas Quint said, his voice like stone. You can't do this. Christopher whispered, the fight gone out of him, replaced by a dazed horror. I built this company. We built this company. I corrected, my gaze locking with his. And you tried to burn it down for a pretty arsonist. Call the vote. Silas. The vote was a formality. Silas, Arthur, Penelope, and I voted yes. The two VCs, after a frantic, whispered consultation, voted yes that the liability was too great. The independent director, seeing the tide, mumbled yes. Bernard, the CFO, abstained, looking at the table. The motion carries. Silas announced, Christopher Bishop, you are hereby removed as CEO and from the board. Effective immediately, you will surrender all company property, access codes, and keys. Security will escort you from the building. As if on cue, the boardroom door opened. Two uniformed security guards, who had been waiting in the hall, entered. They were the same ones who had once nodded deferentially to Christopher. Now their faces were impassive. Christopher didn't move. He just stared at me, across the length of the table, his eyes hollow. You ruin everything you touch. He breathed. The words meant only for me. No, Christopher, I said, gathering my tablet. I just stopped you from ruining what I built. Goodbye. The guards stepped forward, one on each side of his chair. He stood up slowly. A broken man in a $10,000 suit. He allowed himself to be led out without another word. The door closed behind him. Silence descended again, thick and heavy. Silas cleared his throat. The board must now appoint an interim CEO. I nominate Natalie Bishop. The votes were unanimous. In under 10 minutes, I had gone from besieged wife to chief executive officer. I took the seat at the head of the table. It was still warm from his presence. I looked at the faces of the directors, that shocked, relieved, wary. First order of business, I said, my voice now carrying the clear, unmistakable tone of command. Jasmine Reyes is fired, effective immediately. Security will see her out. Second, we are halting all spending on the Nexus project pending a full technical and legal audit. Third, we will be issuing a carefully worded press release about a leadership transition to refocus on core technology. A crisis PR firm, already retained, will manage the message. I stood up. This meeting is adjourned. I have a company to save. As the directors filed out, Silas lingered. He put a gnarled hand on my shoulder for a brief moment. Cleanup is harder than building, Natalie, but it seems you're the only one who can do it. Alone in the boardroom. I looked out at the gray sky over Manhattan. The counterattack was over. We'd taken the hill. Now, the much harder work began. Securing the territory, fortifying the walls, and preparing for the inevitable. Desperate counterattack from the man I had just dethroned. The war wasn't over, but the battle for Ethel was won. I picked up the phone and dialed Ethan. It's done. I'm CEO. Start the clock on everything else. The divorce, the clawback suits, the criminal referrals. Let's finish this. The silence in the boardroom after the door clicked shut on Christopher's back was a physical thing, thick and electric. It was the silence after a lightning strike. I remained standing at the head of the table, my palms flat on the cool obsidian. The seat of power, my seat. The reality of it was a cold, steady hum in my veins. Not triumph, but a profound and heavy responsibility. The other directors were staring at me, a mixture of shock, residual horror, and dawning calculation. Bernard, the CFO, looked like he might be sick. Silas Quint broke the spell with a dry cough. Well, the surgery was a success. Now we have to stop the patient from bleeding out on the table. He fixed his hawk-like gaze on me. Natalie, the press, the employees, the clients. What's the first word? My mind, already racing 3 steps ahead, snapped into focus. The first word is stability. Then, truth. On our terms. I looked at the faces around the table. We have approximately 20 minutes before the news leaks from the security desk. Here is what we do. Right now. I pointed to Bernard. Bernard, you will draft an internal memo. From the office of the CFO to all department heads. It will state that all non-essential capital expenditures are frozen until a strategic review is completed. Specifically, all payments to Palace Consulting and any of its subsidiaries are suspended pending audit. You will copy the new interim CEO, that's me, and the board. Do it from this room. Now, Bernard swallowed, nodded, and fumbled for his laptop, his fingers trembling on the keys. I turned to the 2 venture capitalists. Michelle, Raj, I need you to call our lead investors at Sequoia and Benchmark. Give them a confidential heads up. Tell them there has been a necessary leadership change due to serious breaches of fiduciary duty, that the core business is fundamentally strong, and that I am at the helm to ensure continuity and a return to technical fundamentals. Stress the strength of the Ethel core algorithm. Assure them the Viridian lawsuit poses no risk to our existing products. They'll hear the wild versions soon enough. I want our version in their ears first. They exchanged a glance, then gave curt, professional nods, reaching for their phones and moving to the corners of the room. Penelope, Arthur, please start drafting the boilerplate for the SEC 8K filing. Leadership change. Effective immediately. Keep it bland. Pursuing new strategic direction. The juicy details, stay out of it for now. They began whispering together. Finally, I looked at Silas. I need to address the company. All hands. In 30 minutes. Will you stand with me on the stage? He gave a slow, approving nod. I will. They need to see the old money and the new brain are aligned. My phone, set to silent, was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Unknown numbers. Blocked numbers. 1. I recognized. Vivian, the crisis PR expert. I texted her one word. Go. She knew the drill. The pre-drafted press release. Framing the narrative as a co-founder's return to refocus on core innovation after strategic divergences would hit the wires in tandem with my internal speech. I walked out of the boardroom, my heels echoing in the now too quiet executive hallway. Jessica, the receptionist, looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. I gave her a small, steadying smile. Jessica, please send a global calendar invite. All hands meeting. Main atrium. 30 minutes. Mandatory. Yes. Ms. Bishop. Right away. The MS was deliberate. A shift in the tectonic plates of her world. As I turned toward my new office, the CEO's office, a figure erupted from a doorway down the hall. Jasmine. Her face was a grotesque mask of fury and tear-smudged mascara. The security guards who had escorted Christopher out were nowhere near her. They'd been focused on the bigger prize. You, she shrieked, her voice ricocheting off the glass walls. She stormed up to me, jabbing a finger at my face. You think you've won? You miserable, conniving bitch. Do you have any idea what you've done? I stopped, standing perfectly still. I have a very clear idea. I've removed a cancer from this company. You're part of that metastatic tissue. You need to leave. Jasmine, your employment was terminated by the board. Fuck you. Fuck you and your board. This is my company. He promised me. You ruined everything. Spittle flew from her lips. Her composure, her carefully cultivated aura of cool genius, was utterly gone, revealing the petty, entitled child beneath. I'll sue. I'll sue for wrongful termination, for defamation, for everything. I'll tell the world what a psychotic, lying harpy you are. I took a half-step closer, forcing her to look up at me. My voice dropped, low and lethal. Sue, please. Discovery will be fascinating. The world will get to see the bank statements. the property deeds, the patent fraud, the video of you drunkenly bragging about stealing my husband and my company. You'll be a textbook case of corporate gold digging and intellectual property theft. You'll never work in this industry again. Not at a Starbucks. I let that hang. Now, you can walk out of here with whatever dignity you have left, or security can drag you out of the building. Your choice. For a second, I thought she might actually swing at me, her hand clenched into a fist. Then, the raw, animal fear in her eyes won out. The threat of complete, public obliteration was too real. She took a staggering step back, her breath coming in ragged hitches. He'll fix this, she whispered. A last, pathetic defiance. Chris will fix this. He loves me. Christopher, I said, the name cold and final, is currently trying to find a lawyer who won't drop him as a client the moment they see the evidence. He can't fix your coffee. Jasmine, get out of my building. 2 security guards, finally alerted by the noise, rounded the corner. I nodded toward Jasmine. Please escort Ms. Reyes to collect her personal belongings from her office. Supervise the process, then see her out. Revoke all her access, physical and digital, effective 30 seconds ago. As the guards flanked her, I turned and walked into the CEO's office, closing the door on the sound of her incoherent, fading protests. The room was his monument, the curated first editions, the absurdly expensive modern art, the bar cart with the single malt scotch. It reeked of his insecurity masquerading as taste. I didn't sit in the chair. I walked to the window, the same view I'd looked at from the other side of the desk just weeks ago. Miview now. My phone buzzed. Ethan. The wolf is at the door. Gage, his lawyer, is screaming tortious interference, threatening to file for a restraining order to stop the board's vote. Claims it was invalid. He's blustering. Also, he's hinting at filing for divorce first, in a more favorable jurisdiction. The clock is ticking. I called him. Ethan, the vote was valid. The proxies are ironclad. Let him file whatever he wants. It'll just get him laughed out of court faster. As for the divorce, I took a deep breath. Preempt him. File our suit. In New York. Grounds. Adultery. Constructive abandonment. And cruel and inhuman treatment based on the financial coercion and emotional neglect during my medical crisis. Include a preliminary motion for exclusive use of the marital residence and full temporary custody of Liam. Attach the Hamptons deed and the joint account statement as Exhibit A and B. Ethan whistled softly. Aggressive. I like it. The cruelty claim is smart. Plays to the judge's sympathies. The financial docs make the adultery more than salacious. They make it predatory. It also freezes his assets. The judge will likely grant the temporary orders, especially with a minor child involved. He'll be living in a hotel, paying for 2 households, and fighting for visitation, all while unemployed. Perfect, I said, the word tasting like cold steel. Do it, today. And Ethan, begin the draft of the civil complaint against him and Jasmine for the embezzlement. We'll let the criminal referral percolate with the DA, but I want a civil judgment clawing back every dime, with interest and punitive damages on it. Boss, he said, a new note of respect in his voice. A soft knock. It was Anya from legal, looking terrified but resolute. The press release is going out. The emails are starting. What do you want me to do? Anya, you're now acting general counsel until we can do a permanent search. Your first task, work with Ethan Cole's firm on the litigation holds. Preserve everything related to Palace, Hermes, the Nexus Project, and all communications between Christopher, Jasmine, and the board. Then, draft a formal letter to Christopher Bishop on company letterhead demanding the immediate return of all company property, including intellectual property, and the repayment of all misappropriated funds, detailing the amount. Give him 48 hours to respond before we file. Her eyes widened at the promotion. Then, hardened with determination. Yes, CEO Bishop. CEO Bishop, the title settled on my shoulders. It fit. 30 minutes later, I walked onto the makeshift stage in the main atrium. The space was packed, a sea of anxious, curious faces. The murmur died to a dead hush as I stepped to the microphone. Silas a solid, imposing presence slightly behind my right shoulder. I saw Marcus, David Chin, Onion. I saw the sycophants who had clung to Jasmine, now looking panicked. I saw the old guard, standing straighter. Good afternoon, I said, my voice amplified, clear, and calm in the vast space. Many of you have seen the press release by now. I'll be brief. This morning, the board of directors voted for a change in leadership. Christopher Bishop is no longer the CEO of Ethel Technologies. I have been appointed interim CEO, effective immediately. A wave of gasps and murmurs rolled through the crowd. I held up a hand. This was not a decision taken lightly. It was taken to address serious breaches of fiduciary duty and strategic failures that put the company and your work at risk. Let me be unequivocal. Ethel is not crumbling. Our core technology, the Ethel algorithm that you have all helped build upon .is sound. It is the foundation of our past success, and it will be the bedrock of our future. I paused, making eye contact with different parts of the crowd. Some of you have been working on the Nexus initiative. That work is now paused, not as a punishment, but for a comprehensive technical and strategic review. We will not bet this company on unvetted, unstable technology. We will be bold, but we will be smart. I saw David Chen give a small, firm nod. My first priority is stability. My second is transparency. You will hear wild rumors. You will read sensational headlines. Here is the truth. The previous leadership made poor choices with company resources and poor choices in their personal conduct that bled into the business. That era is over. Our job now is to look forward, to do the work, to build things that matter, that last, and that we can all be proud of. I leaned into the mic, my tone shifting from declarative to resolute. For those of you who have been heads down, doing the hard work despite the noise, thank you. Your dedication is what saved this company. For those who prospered through politics rather than prowess, consider this a reset. We are meritocrats now. Show me your code, your ideas, your commitment to this company's real mission, and you will have a place here. I straightened up. There will be an all-company QA tomorrow. Bring your questions. For now, go back to your teams. Talk to your managers. The work continues, and it's work worth doing. Thank you. I stepped back from the microphone. The silence held for a beat. Then a smattering of applause started, led fiercely by Marcus and the engineers. It grew, not into a roaring ovation, but into a solid, steady wave of sound. It was the sound of a company exhaling a breath it had been holding for years. Back in the CEO's office, my office, I allowed myself 5 minutes of stillness. I looked at the chair. Then I walked over, moved the silly abstract sculpture off the desk, and sat down, the leather side under my weight. My computer chimed. The first headlines were popping up on my monitored alerts. TechCrunch, Ethel rocked. Co-founder Natalie Bishop ousts husband as CEO. Business Insider, Palace coup at Ethel. Strategic differences or something darker. Forbes, Natalie Bishop's return. Can the brains behind Ethel save it from its own hype? Vivian had done her job. The narrative was framing me as the savior. The return of the adult in the room. My personal phone buzzed. A 212 number I didn't know. I answered. Natalie, it's Robert Gage, Christopher's lawyer. His voice was strained, trying for menace and landing on anxious. This stunt you pulled, it's not going to stand. We're filing an injunction to reverse the board's action, and we're filing for divorce. Christopher will be seeking primary custody of Liam, given the unstable, vengeful environment you're creating. I almost laughed. Robert, you've been served with our divorce filing about 10 minutes ago. Check your email. As for the board action, bring your injunction. Discovery will be a public spectacle, and my evidence is cinematic. As for Liam, my voice went diamond hard. If Christopher attempts to approach my son outside of legally sanctioned, supervised visitation, which he'll have to petition the court for, I will have him arrested for harassment, so fast it will make his head spin. Are we clear? Gage was silent. He'd seen the filing. He knew the ground had given way beneath his client. This isn't over. Natalie, it is for you. Robert, I said quietly, tell your client to get a new lawyer, one who specializes in plea bargains and bankruptcy. I hung up. The fallout was swirling, a hurricane of consequences, but I was in the eye, calm and clear. The company was mine. The narrative was turning. The legal noose was tightening around Christopher's neck. I pulled up a fresh document on my screen. The subject line, Ethel 90-day stabilization plan, that I began to type. The war for survival was over. The work of rebuilding had begun. The sleek titanium award felt solid and cool in my hand. The inscription read, Tech Visionary Award for Leadership in Sustainable Innovation. Natalie Bishop. Ethel Technologies. The audience in the Waldorf ballroom was a blur of tuxedos and gowns. Their applause a distant, polite roar. 6 months ago, I'd been the subject of their scandalized whispers. Now, I was accepting their accolades. The irony wasn't lost on me, but the satisfaction was real. It wasn't for me. It was for the company that had survived. Your ability to not just steady the ship, but chart a radically new, principled course is what this industry needs. The presenter, a legendary Silicon Valley investor, had said the principled course was code for not embezzling or sleeping with your staff. The bar was pathetically low, but I'd take it. Later, in the buzzing cacophony of the post-ceremony reception, a familiar figure materialized at my elbow. Arthur Block, one of the early investors who'd backed me in the boardroom coup, sipped champagne. Principled course. He murmured, a ghost of a smile on his lips. A polite way of saying you cleaned out the Augean stables with a fire hose. The stock price agrees with your methods. Natalie, up 32% since the transition. Stability and real innovation are good for business. Arthur, who knew? I replied, taking a mineral water from a passing tray. The champagne didn't interest me. The clarity did. The SEC inquiry is closed, he said, lowering his voice. No action. The DA's office, they're letting the civil suit run its course. Too messy for a criminal trial with a sympathetic figure like you as the victim. A gift. It was. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office had reviewed Ethan's evidence package, decided it was a complex civil matter, and quietly stepped back. The threat of criminal referral had been the stick that broke Christopher's resistance. The actuality was a distraction I didn't need. And the civil matter? I asked, though I knew the answer. I wanted to hear him say it. Will be settled by the end of next week. Arthur confirmed. Gage is finally talking sense. Or rather, his client has run out of money to pay him to talk nonsense. That was the real fallout, not the awards. The slow, grinding, inexorable victory of the law. The final meeting was in Ethan Cole's conference room, a place that had become a second war room. The air was different now. The tension was gone, replaced by the clean, efficient atmosphere of a mopping-up operation. Christopher sat across the table, flanked by a new lawyer, a weary-looking woman from a mid-tier firm. Not the sleek Robert Gage. Gage had dropped him as a client 3 months ago. When the retainers dried up, Christopher looked diminished. The expensive suit hung loosely on him. The tan had faded to a pallor. The arrogant glint in his eye was extinguished, replaced by a hollow resentment. He couldn't even look at me directly. Ethan laid out the final settlement agreement, his voice a calm, relentless monotone. To summarize the binding terms, Christopher, you agree to the following. 1. The divorce is granted on grounds of adultery, as per the submitted evidence. Natalie receives primary physical and legal custody of Liam James Bishop. You are granted supervised visitation, 1 weekend per month, to be reviewed in 1 year pending a psychological evaluation and consistent, on-time child support payments. Christopher flinched at supervised, but said nothing. His lawyer nodded tersely. 2. Regarding the marital assets. The penthouse at 900 Park Avenue, the apartment in Aspen, and the vintage Porsche are awarded to Natalie. Free and clear. You retain the apartment in Soho and the Tesla. The investment portfolios are split 60-40 in Natalie's favor, reflecting the disproportionate dissipation of assets during the marriage. Dissipation, Christopher muttered, the word bitter on his tongue. Funneling marital funds into a joint account with your mistress qualifies, Ethan said without missing a beat. 3. The civil suit regarding the misappropriation of Ethel funds. You agree to a judgment of $4.2 million, representing the principal diverted, plus interest. This judgment will be satisfied by the immediate signing over of your remaining shares in Ethel Holdings to Natalie, and a lien on your Soho property. Failure to meet the payment plan on the lien will result in foreclosure. This was the heart of it. He was losing his last shred of ownership in the company he'd tried to steal. His jaw worked. 4. Ethan continued. You agree to a permanent injunction, forbidding you from making any public statements, written or oral, disparaging Natalie Bishop or Ethel Technologies, and from approaching within 500 feet of her personal residences, her place of work, or Liam's school. A violation results in immediate arrest and the forfeiture of all visitation rights. And her, Christopher finally spat, his eyes flicking to me for a second before skittering away. She gets to say whatever she wants. The evidence is not disparagement. It is fact, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was quiet, final, and I have no interest in talking about you at all. Christopher, this is the last time I plan to be in a room with you. He stared at the polished table, a muscle ticking in his cheek. The fight was gone. The money was gone. The empire was gone. The girlfriend we'd heard through the grapevine had fled to Los Angeles the moment the civil suit was filed, hoping to sell a startup survivor tell-all that no reputable publisher would touch. My client agrees to the terms, his lawyer said, her voice thick with professional defeat. She pushed the thick stack of documents toward him. Sign here, here, and initial each page. The scratching of his pen was the only sound. It took 10 minutes. When it was done, Ethan collected the copies. We're done. The transfer of shares will be executed by close of business today. Your first supervised visitation with Liam is scheduled for the 15th. The supervisor's contact information will be emailed to you. Do not be late. Christopher stood up, looking like a man leaving his own funeral. He paused, his eyes finally meeting mine. The hatred was there, but it was feeble, banked by utter ruin. You took everything. He whispered. No, Christopher, I said, gathering my briefcase. You set fire to everything we built. I just saved the foundation. What I build on it now has nothing to do with you. I turned and walked out of the conference room, Ethan at my side. I didn't look back. In the elevator, I let out a long, slow breath I felt I'd been holding for years. It's over, Ethan said, a statement of fact. The war is. I corrected. The work isn't. The work was thriving. Ethel's offices buzzed with a new energy, purposeful, collaborative, devoid of the fear and sycophancy of the Jasmine era. I'd kept my promise about meritocracy. David Chun was now my CTO, leading a retooled Ethel Core 2.0 initiative that was already yielding breakthroughs. Marcus ran infrastructure with the serene competence of a master engineer. Onyo, after excelling as acting GC, had been officially promoted to general counsel. My old office, the CSO one, was now occupied by a brilliant, quiet data ethicist I'd poached from MIT. My office was Christopher's old space, but it bore no trace of him. The gaudy art was gone, replaced with a few clean-line pieces and a wall of framed photos. Liam at the beach, a shot of the original founding team me, Christopher, and two others we'd bought out years ago that I didn't believe in erasing history, just in understanding it, and a schematic of the first Ethel algorithm, my original handwriting. I was reviewing the Q4 projections that they were strong, based on real client growth, not hype. When my intercom buzzed. Ms. Bishop? Ethan Cole is here. Says he's not a lawyer today. A smile touched my lips. Send him in. Ethan entered, carrying not a briefcase, but a small paper bag from a local bakery. He looked different out of his suit jacket, more relaxed. I come bearing a peace offering, or a congratulations offering. Chocolate croissants, the good kind. Finally, a billable item I'm happy to pay for, I said, gesturing to the sitting area by the window. What's the occasion? The settlement is finalized? Legally, yes. All filings are done. The shares are in your name. The lien is recorded. He's a tenant in his own apartment. Essentially, Ethan pulled the pastries from the bag. But that's not the occasion. The occasion is that it's Friday, and I'm here as your friend, not your lawyer, to invite you and Liam up to my family's place in the Berkshires this weekend. The leaves are turning. There's a lake. There are horses. There's zero cell service. My kids are desperate to meet Liam. They've heard tales of the boy who conquered the playground slide. I was taken aback. The invitation was simple, human, and entirely separate from the world of court orders and board votes. It had been so long since I'd existed in a space like that. Ethan, the company, there's so much to, can run for 48 hours without you. He finished gently. Natalie, you won. You rebuilt the kingdom. Now you have to remember how to live in it. Liam needs to see his mother, not just as a CEO, but as a person who knows how to skip a stone on a lake. He was right. The constant vigilance, the battle-ready posture, was a hard habit to break. But the war was over. It was time to learn peace. What about the horses? I asked, a genuine laugh bubbling up. I haven't ridden since I was a teenager. They're gentle, like giant, hay-eating dogs. It'll be good for you. Both of you. I looked out my window, at the skyline I'd reclaimed. It wasn't going anywhere. Okay, I said, the decision feeling incredibly light. Okay, we'd love to. Thank you, Ethan. Great. We'll leave tomorrow at 10. Pack sweaters. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. You know, I've seen a lot of clients go through hell. Most come out broken, or bitter, or just smaller. You didn't. You came out complete. It's impressive as hell to watch. Before I could formulate a response, my desk phone rang. My new assistant's voice. Ms. Bishop. Sorry to interrupt. Call on line 1. It's Forbes. They want to confirm the details for the 30 under 30 feature they're doing on CTO David Chin. And they'd like a quote from you about fostering young talent. I covered the receiver. See, I said to Ethan. The narrative changes. He grinned and gave a small wave as he left. I turned back to the phone, to the future, to the work that was no longer a battle, but a building. Put them through, I said, later that evening, in the penthouse that now felt like a home. Liam's colorful drawings on the fridge, his small sneakers by the door that I helped him pack a small duffel bag. Are there really horses, Mommy? He asked, his eyes wide. There really are, sweetie. And Ethan's kids? Will they like my spaceship? They will love your spaceship. I zipped up his bag. We're going to have an adventure, a quiet one. As I tucked him into bed, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A single email alert. The subject line, notification, Industry Innovation Awards, finalist, Ethel Core 2.0, Next Gen Ethical AI Framework. I didn't open it. I kissed my son's forehead. breathing in his little boy smell of soap and innocence. The awards, the headlines, the stock price, they were the echoes of a victory already won. The real prize was right here, the quiet, the safety, the freedom to build a life, not just a company. I looked out at the glittering city, no longer a cage or a prize, but simply a view from my home. The dawn of the new day wasn't on the horizon. It was already here, quiet and bright and full of ordinary, beautiful possibility. I turned off the light,